Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chamber University, brought to you by the Miramar Pembroke Pines Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Western Florida Chamber of Commerce, and the Pembroke Park West Park Chamber of Commerce. Today's session is Know Your Customer, Grow Your Business, using market research and customer experience metrics to drive sales. So here's a question worth sitting with. What if the most powerful sales strategy you have isn't a new ad campaign, but simply just understanding your customer better than your competition does? To guide us through that, please welcome Yanique Grant, founder and CEO of ElevateCX, a certified customer experience specialist and trainer serving South Florida and the Caribbean. Yanique brings over 17 years of experience in market research, consumer behavior analysis, and customer strategy, with hands-on work across telecommunications, retail, banking, hospitality, and healthcare. She's trained more than 50,000 people locally and internationally, and she is the author of The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience and the host of the podcast, Navigating the Customer Experience. Today, Yanique is going to show you how to uncover what your customers truly want without spending another dollar on marketing. Break down what metrics look like, what the NPS and CSAT are really telling you, and I'm sure she's going to correct me on those, and show us what those things are and help you turn that data into stronger sales conversations. You don't need a big budget. You just need the right questions and the willingness to listen. So please help me in join me in welcoming Yanique Grant.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can?
Yep.
I was just trying to connect my AirPods. Okay, here we go. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes? Why am I not hearing you though?
Mm,
Do I need to turn the volume up?
how about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. Okay. For some reason, Zoom is not allowing me to change the audio. Why is that? Okay. I'm gonna go back to. I was trying to use my AirPods so that it would block out some of the noise that's happening in here at the moment that I unfortunately don't have much control over. But I'm going to continue as is. Everyone can hear me, correct?
Yes, sounds good.
All right, so thank you again, Angie, for that warm welcome and introduction. My name is Yanique Grant, and we're going to be talking about knowing your customer, growing your business, using market research and customer experience. The acronym for that, or the shortened version for that, is CX. So as we go through the presentation, and you may hear me say CX, it really relates to customer experience. If you are in the space of customer experience, you will know that CX is, one of those terms that they use. And so we're going to be looking at the CX metrics that drive sales. As Angie would have mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of ElevateCX LLC and PTOS, which stands for Professional Training and Occupational Services. I am the principal for both organizations, and we've been in operation for over 17 years. We offer customer service training as well as market research services in the space of customer experience. I've trained over 50,000 people. I'm a certified customer service trainer, as well as a certified mystery shopper. And I've written a book called The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. I was published on the cusp of COVID, March 2020. And I'm also a podcaster. I've been podcasting for 10 years now. It's called Navigating the Customer Experience. We release an episode bi-weekly, and we're 276 episodes published, available on all podcast platforms. So I'm going to here to kind of give you an idea of the things that you need to pay attention to as a business owner. What if your most powerful growth strategy isn't just another ad campaign, right? But it's simply understanding your customer better than your competition does. And so one of the things that we're going to look at is focusing less on trying to spend a big budget, because I believe a lot of business owners, especially if they're not familiar or au fait with the different tools that you can use and how easy it is to access these tools, they may think that you have to hire a big research company or you have to hire, an expensive consultant to get this kind of data. But you actually have the information sitting in your systems. You actually have tools that are free that you can utilize to gather this information that will help to give you the power to make more informed decisions. So there are 3 R's of knowing your customer that we are going to focus on in the presentation. And it's actually the bedrock of anything that I do with any of my clients. We focus on these 3 R's. How are you going to retain your existing customers? How are you going to ensure that you maintain a positive reputation in the marketplace, in your industry? And how are you going to increase your revenue, right? So your retention is keeping a customer. You want to keep them. I find a lot of organizations, they focus heavily on marketing and trying to get new customers, but they're not taking the time to focus on the customers that they're already servicing, people who have already bought from you, people who have tried and tested you. Why not focus on them and try to let them become your promoters and your evangelists for your business? Your reputation, of course, is based on what people say about you, what they say when you're no longer in the room. What would your customers say about you if they were talking about you in comparison to another service provider? How would you compare? And so you want to ensure that you have a reputation that's built on integrity, honesty, reliability, those core, I would say, bedrock competencies that will set you apart from your competition. And of course, everyone is in business to make money, whether you're a nonprofit or you're a profit organization. It requires money to keep the wheels turning, to pay your vendors, to pay your suppliers, to get the services and products produced. Whatever it is, it requires some level of funding. So our first poll, and only poll, actually, I'm going to beg Angie if she could just launch that poll for me, please, is I'd kind of like to know, for those of you that are here with me, how do you currently collect feedback today? Do you use a formal system like a survey form or a CRM, right? And a CRM is a customer relationship management platform. Or do you ask informally, like maybe call your customers randomly or send them an occasional email? Do you use reviews to collect feedback through Google or even Yelp? Or is it a case where you don't really collect it? You have no system at all, you're not calling, you're not really using any Google reviews, and you don't have a formal system. So if you could take, a few seconds and answer those four, there are four options, as I mentioned before. Which one is it that you're currently actively using in terms of collecting feedback from people who actually do business with you? Whether you're a single person organization or you have 10, 15 employees or 100 employees, we would like to know what you're currently doing in terms of collecting feedback from your customers. Because if you're not collecting any feedback, then how are you going to know how you're doing? And it's always good to have it in a structured way, collected in a very, formatted way that you can have this information to use to inform on any decisions that you're making. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. I think we've had enough time to answer. Great. And the results are 25% of you stated you asked formally, 25% of you stated that you use reviews only, and 50% of you stated that you don't really collect it. So that's 50% is a good portion, based on the number of persons that are here. And I think this presentation will be of value to you if it is that you're in that space where you are not collecting that information. All right. Now, if you have customers, this is for you. So whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in banking and finance, whether you're telecommunication, whether you're in the restaurant business, whether you're in government, whatever industry you are in, the tools that we're going to present to you here can be applicable to any industry. So first, we're going to start off with knowing your customer using low-cost market research. Because as I said before, you really don't need a big budget. You don't need to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this kind of information. We want it to be done in such a way where you are able to collect the information and capture the data that you are trying to collect. Now, the cost of not knowing what is happening in your business can be critical as an organization. The customers that you're about to lose rarely, right, will say a word. Silence is not satisfaction. I can't tell you over the 17 years I've been in business that I've spoken to CEOs for organizations and they've said to me that, the reason why they brought me in is when they look at their balance sheet at the end of the year, they realize that 30% of their customer base or 20% of their customer base is no longer there. No questions have been had with those customers. The customers probably left the business. They found another service provider. They're not utilizing that company anymore, and there's no retention advisor or retention person in the organization tracking to say, okay, this customer would have bought from us every month. In the last 2 months, we haven't seen them made a purchase. Or this customer normally places an order at this time of the month. We haven't seen them place an order. So you really need to stay close to how your customers are operating. And because they're not saying anything or you're not hearing anything from them, that doesn't mean that they're not having concerns or they don't have reservations or they're not having issues. So 96% will never complain and they'll just stop coming back. These are statistics that I pulled from the American Customer Satisfaction Index, right? 5 to 7 times it costs more, right? For you as a business owner to win a new customer than to keep an existing one. Just like in a business, it's more expensive to when you have high attrition, when you constantly have to be recruiting and training people because your staff turnover is so high. It's the same principle here. It costs more for you to be spending money on marketing and advertising and different initiatives to get new customers than it does to ensure that you're satisfying the ones that are already there. And of course, the final component is when your customers are unhappy, statistics say they'll tell 15 people about their unhappiness. 15, right? I mean, I can imagine with with the insurge of social media nowadays with Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, depending on the person's influence and how many persons they have following them, that 15 can easily have a great multiplier effect. If you have a very disgruntled customer, they've probably tried different avenues to express their discomfort and displeasure with the service you are providing, and they haven't gotten anywhere. And so now they've decided to voice that opinion on social media, which of course amplifies the discomfort that they're feeling even more. So we need to look at those opportunities and try not to focus on customers who are new or just try to always be getting new customers, but more focus on the ones that we have in existence. Now, when you're researching without a research budget, there are 5 ways that we recommend that you can hear the truth. And the first is to ask 5 questions using a short CSAT survey to your last 30 customers. The second is to mine your reviews, read your last 20, whether it be on Google or Yelp or whatever platform you collect reviews for. Whatever repeats 3 times or more should be your priority. So if there's a review that's negative and that review has 3 or more particular, the feedback is the same when you break them into different themes or categorize them, and you notice that the customer has or different customers have fallen into this particular category, then that's something that you would need to prioritize. It could be wait time, it could be the quality of the information they're getting, it could be they're complaining about the price, whatever the case is. Once you see it 3 or more times, it's something that you really need to look into and try to address. Third is to listen socially. People say online what they won't say to your face, clearly because they're not face to face with you. So they might post something or comment on someone else's post. And so those are opportunities for you to tap into any discomfort that your customers might be having. You also could talk to 5 customers. A 10-minute call beats any dashboard, right? So you definitely want to reach out and get feedback from your customers. Shop your own business by being a mystery shopper. For those of you that have been in business for quite some time and you are exposed to watching television, there used to be a show that comes on TV. Not sure if it still does, but it used to be called Undercover Boss, where the boss would go into the organization disguised as a customer and experience what it was like to do business with his company or her company. And that still is an excellent way of trying to find out what kind of experience your customers are actually having. Do they have to wait long when the telephone rings? Does someone answer the phone within the first 3 rings? What's the quality of the information that they're getting? Are they courteous and accommodating and welcoming in terms of how they're dealing with your customers? But you won't know unless you're actually, every now and again trying to get that feedback. And a good way to do that is by shopping your own business. And then sixthly, you want to watch your own data. A lot of time the answers are already there, but we're not paying attention to them. So we're going to kind of focus on 2 tools in this presentation. The first is a CSAT survey. And what is a CSAT survey? It's a short survey that captures how customers rate you. And the second is it tells you the level of satisfaction they have any loyalty signals, any service gaps, any trends. And it's basically also something that you can do for free, for a very low cost. I mean, you have Google Form. If you have Google Workspace and you're using Google already in your work ecosystem, you can create a form and generate those questions and send it out to your customer base. If you're using Office 365, you have the Microsoft Forms. If you're in that ecosystem, you could send out the Microsoft form. And I'm sure you have many others out there, but I've given you two that I believe literally people use every day and we take for granted, and we're not utilizing the tools that are a part of these platforms that we navigate and use on a daily basis. Then there's mystery shopping. And I'm a big lover of mystery shopping. I remember the first time that I found out about it, and I got certified as a mystery shopper, and then I started mystery shopping myself for different organizations. And I still do it today, but now I also offer that service for organizations if they would like us to hire mystery shoppers and train them and send them to the different locations that you may have to get feedback on the quality of the experience that you are having. So mystery shopping is where you send a trained evaluator into your location. They pose as a customer, right? It can be a visit, it can be a telephone call, and they're assessing what the experience is against whatever standard you have in place. So it's really a good way to measure based on what you've communicated to your team if they're actually executing that in the day-to-day interactions that they're having with your customers. It tells you exactly what's happening on the floor, and the cost is you could probably spend, I would say, anywhere between 25 and 50 US dollars to compensate somebody for a mystery shop. But you could also give them a gift card, maybe an Amazon gift card. So there are many different creative ways that you can compensate mystery shoppers, but it's also a low cost option as well that you can utilize. Now, your 5-question CSAT survey that I recommend that we utilize, and we're going to start with 5 questions. Now, we do CSAT surveys for financial institutions, and because it's a survey that they do on an annual basis, a lot of the times the CSAT survey will be 50 questions because there are lots of things that they're trying to get feedback on based on the different products and services that the financial institution offers. And because it's just one time that they're doing it for the year, that's why the survey instrument tends to be so long. But that's not what I'm suggesting to you here, because this survey that I'm suggesting, that's just 5 questions, is something that you can send out maybe after every interaction, right? Or after every telephone call, or maybe once a week. So it's something that would touch the customer on a higher frequency than something that's only done once per year. We want to keep it at 5 questions because we don't want the person to be discouraged and demotivated and not want to answer the survey. People are strapped for time. They have lots of things doing. They're being pulled in many different directions. So you want to ensure that the survey is short. And when the person sees that it's just 5 questions, they're like, okay, I could answer those 5 questions, and they'll jump on and answer them. So question number 1 says, overall, how satisfied were you today, right? And the scale of 1 to 10, we're using the ACSI benchline, which is the American Customer Satisfaction Index, and they use a scale of 1 to 10. How likely are you to buy from us again? This predicts whether or not they will become a repeat customer, right? And the scale again here is 1 to 10. How likely are you to recommend us? Now, this is the NPS question, and NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. And I'm sure many of you have answered this question for different organizations that you have done business with. It's a score that many companies aspire to do really well in. I think some of the best organizations like Amazon and Apple, their NPS is like 60 or 65, right? So they're not even in the 80s or 90s. Nobody's reaching there at this point in time. So you want to benchmark your organization against whatever the industry standard is for NPS in your area that you're operating in. And that information is accessible online. You can Google it. I'm sure the information is there that will allow you to identify how you are performing versus how the industry is performing overall. What did we do well today? This is an open-ended question, and this allows the customer to give feedback on what you did well. Was it that the team member was knowledgeable? Was it that she was quick and she was easy to communicate with? And so they'll share what they really liked about the interaction. And then the final one is, what's the one thing we could do better? And that now forces the customer to think about the interaction on a holistic level if there is one thing that could be improved, what would be that one thing? And they share that information with you. That's what you would focus on, because if you get recurring feedback from different customers that basically, reinforce what the question is asking. In other words, if you have 5 customers and you ask them that number 5, and 3 of them said the wait time and 2 of them said price, I would focus on wait time, because 3 of the 5 have indicated wait time. And that's why you kind of want to ensure that you look at the feedback that you're getting and then band them into different categories or themes, so you can create a level of hierarchy to say, okay, this is the area that we need to focus on first. And then you basically go through, strategically. Now, mystery shopping would be the second deliverable that we recommend you could employ to capture data. And as I said before, the mystery shopping is based on your standards. So you're really measuring the team member. The evaluator is measuring the team member based on the standard that has been set for the organization. So ideally, it's good if you have certain standards in place, or even service level agreements in place, in terms of what each employee's expectation is of another employee or another department. Now, the first is you have to define the standard. And it could read as you need to greet the customer within the first 30 seconds. It can't be that they're just friendly. It has to be very specific. So your standard has to have some smart, right? Some smart tools that are attached to it. And one of the biggest things of that is the measurement of it. So a suggestion here is you could say greet within the first 30 seconds, or answer the phone by the third ring, for example. It should be a one-page scorecard, and we recommend that you have a scale of 0, 1, or 2. We don't want the scale to be too wide, because we find when the scale is too wide, people tend, if they didn't have a really great experience, then they're not going to rate you high. But if they had a really bad experience, they'll rate you low. But then if it was okay, then they're kind of in the middle. We don't want an in the middle kind of situation. We want to know how the standard was achieved. Is it that the person did what they were supposed to do? Is it that they did part of what they were supposed to do? Or is it that they didn't do it at all? And that's why we have it on a 3 basis scale: 0, 1, 2. You're going to choose a scenario that you want the mystery shopper to exercise. Is it that you want them to do a purchase? You want them to do an inquiry? You want them to make a complaint? We've seen that complaints tend to reveal the most, because it shows you the temperament of the team member, how they're going to approach it. Is it that there's an escalation process? And that kind of gives you a little bit more insight into how the interaction is managed. You have to brief the shopper, and it's ideal if they're compensated. When we do mystery shopping projects, the mystery shoppers are compensated, because even though they're providing feedback, and giving you a report, it's a job. And so they really need to be provided with some form of compensation, whether it be through a gift card or an actual per certain amount of money. Then you're going to debrief and reshop, right? So you're going to coach that person in the organization, and you're going to not punish them, because the feedback that you get from the mystery shop, whether it's good or bad, it's still feedback. And if it's bad, it's an opportunity, because now you're able to tackle something that you weren't aware of, and you can hopefully make things better. If it's good, then you're going to reinforce that behavior and hopefully celebrate your team publicly, and that will motivate them to continue demonstrating that type of service with other customers. So these are the 5, I would say, components or deliverables as it relates to the mystery shopping in 5 steps. Now, there are some key metrics that you would need to also pay attention to as it relates to delivering customer experience. And we kind of touched a little bit on it from the CSAT survey when we asked about the NPS question. And then there are the CSAT questions, and then there is effort, customer effort. How much effort and energy does a customer have to put into the interaction to get what they're looking for? If you have a website, for example, and a customer check out something on the website, it shouldn't be a case where they have to be looking deeply to find the information. It's buried in the website on the layers and layers of pages for them to get to it. You kind of need to do maybe an audit to identify if, navigating through your website is an easy process. And if they're trying to seek information, is it just a 1-click or a 2-click, or is it that they have to click several times to get to what they're trying to achieve? So the benchmark we're using is the American Customer Satisfaction Index, and the US national score is 76.7. That's across all industries. ACSI was founded in 1994, and it's the only national cross-industry measure of US customer satisfaction. It has over 200,000 reviews and it runs across 400 plus companies, 40 plus industries, and it runs on a 0 to 100 scale. It's a great yardstick for you to use to identify what it is that your organization is doing, right? Versus what other organizations in your industry are doing. So this table that we're gonna kind of quickly look at here, the industry standard is highlighted in yellow, right? The US national average is 76.7. We rounded it up to 77. And then based on industry, community banks is actually the highest according to the ACSI for 2026, right? That's followed by full service restaurants, then specialty retail, then banks, then quick service restaurants, then general merchandise, then supermarkets, then credit unions, and food delivery is the lowest, 75. Now, this is the industry standard. It doesn't mean that on an individual level, right, that the individual organizations are not performing higher or lower, because remember, this is on an aggregate level across the entire United States and the different industries. I would encourage you as an organization or as a business owner to visit the American Customer Satisfaction Index website and kind of look at the benchmarks that they have by industry and use that as your yardstick to guide yourself to have a better understanding of where it is that you are in terms of your performance and measure to see how are you doing. Do any of you know what your ACSI score is? You know, if I was to ask that question now, do you know what your score is in comparison to what the industry standard is? Or what the industry, well, not the industry standard, but the industry score for 2026, and also based on the US national average? And I'm throwing that question out there. You can just answer in the chat if any of you actually know. Do any of you know? No? Okay. So since I'm not getting any feedback, I'm going to assume that nobody knows. So this is some of homework for you. Go and do your research to see where you fall. All right. The first metric we're going to look at is CSAT. And the question that you would get that information from is, are they happy with what we just did? Now, we've looked at the benchmark, which is 76.7. And as I said before, you're asking them, are they happy with what you just did? And it comes straight from question one from the CSAT, the 5-question CSAT survey that we just looked at, right? Overall, how satisfied were you today? And the calculation of that is you're gonna average all of those answers and then convert that average onto a 0 to 100 scale. So it's comparable to the national number. So you're gonna take the average, subtract 1, right? And then you're going to divide that by 9 and then multiply by 100. And that stretches it onto the 0 to 100 scale that everyone uses. Now, the real world example that we're giving you is, let's say you have a 6-chair salon and you collected 40 responses and the answers averaged 8.2, right? You're going to take that 8.2, all right, and you're going to subtract 1, right? And then you are going to convert that times 100, and that would give you the percentage. We do have the breakdown, I believe, in the takeaway document that I've given to Angie to share with you. That kind of goes in a little bit more detail for how the calculation is done. But if you follow the format of what I'm suggesting, it will give you an idea of where you fall. We also recommend that you do this every quarter and use it as a trend or a base mark for you to identify where your numbers are. So you can basically know what your CSAT score is. It's a great way to tap into what your customers are saying, how they're feeling, what they're thinking, so that you can be in a better position to improve on any recommendations that they would have given you in that last question where they asked, what is one thing that you could have done to improve or, to enhance the service. So definitely pay attention to your CSAT right there. The second metric is the Net Promoter Score. And the Net Promoter Score, unlike the CSAT that uses the ACSI scale of 1 to 10, the Net Promoter uses a 0 to 10 scale. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this company to your family or your friend or a colleague? And the reality is, if the customer had a poor experience, one that affected them emotionally, they're probably not going to recommend that organization to a family member or friend. Nobody wants their family member or their friends to have poor experiences. So they're going to want their family member or friend to have a good experience, have a good interaction. And as a result of that, they're not going to recommend an organization that treated them poorly. And they're going to speak about it. Up to yesterday, my girlfriend called me. She said she took her kids to Aventura. I think one is 7 and the other one is almost 4. So she's 3. And it was like an ice cream place. And she went in and there was a particular flavor she wanted. And she asked them if they had that flavor. And the girl said no. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. She didn't say, oh, we have another flavor that's similar. Or you could try this one. Customers who like that flavor also like this one. Like there was no initiative on the part of the employee to try and get her to buy anything. And she said just based on how her mannerism was, her facial expression, she just answered no and then walked off. She was totally disappointed and she just walked out and she didn't buy anything. She told me, I don't know how many other persons she told the story to. When she told me, she spoke about it for a good 5 minutes before she came off of it. And I say that to say your interactions that people have with your organizations, they have an emotional impact. And depending on how impacted the customer is from the interaction, they can tell more than 15 people. Worse if they go to social media with it. So this is definitely a metric I think all of you should pay attention to. Now, as I said, it's a 0 to 10 scale. Persons who score is 0 to 6 are considered to be detractors. It means that they're going to warn people about the experience that they had with you. So if someone asks the question, how did you think the experience at so and so was? They're gonna be like, oh no, don't go there. The last time I went there, that happened. It was a poor experience. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't get back to people. They don't communicate. They don't respond to emails. And that's of course is if you're getting that feedback from someone that you value their opinion, then you are not going to be guided by whatever promotion or advertisement that they have on TV or on social media. You're going to be guided by what that person who you consider their opinion valuable more than any advertisement or marketing that you're going to see. So you don't want to have customers who are in the detractor space, a lot of customers, right? Or any at all for that matter. Then you have customers who score you 7 and 8. They're satisfied with the service that you gave them, but they're not loyal. Depending on the next time they interact with you, they could easily sway to being a detractor or they could be swayed to being a promoter. So they're kind of in the middle. And the funny thing is, when we do the NPS for many organizations, the bulk of their customers that answer this question fall in the passives section. What's even more important to note is the passive section is not used to calculate NPS. The only thing that's used to calculate NPS is your promoters and your detractors. So really and truly, you should be aiming to migrate as much as possible the bulk of those people from the passive section into the promoter section because that's where the score really matters, right? In terms of the calculation. And then persons who score you 9 and 10, they refer you for free. I call those people your evangelists. There are your word of mouth advertisers. To this day, word of mouth advertising is still free. It costs nothing, right? If Angie was to recommend a restaurant she went to last week, that's free. Free promotion and advertisement for that restaurant. If I end up taking my family there, that's new business that they got all because Angie recommended them. And vice versa, if I had recommended her to go to a restaurant or a bank or to visit a hotel on a particular vacation or even to try a service provider, maybe for a hairdresser or to get her makeup done or whatever the case is, that level of referral is free. It costs nothing. And so every single interaction that you have with your customers or your team members have with your customers, it should be with the aim to ensure that people walk away from the interaction feeling so good. If they were asked this question, they would score you a 9 or a 10. So the calculation for NPS is the percent of promoters subtracting the percent of detractors. So let's say your promoters for your NPS is 60 and your detractors are 20, right? Then your NPS would be 40. And so again, it's important that if you majority of the people that answer your NPS question are scoring 7 and 8, that's not good for your organization because their score is not taken into account when the NPS is calculated. the only categories that are taken into account are your detractors and your promoters. So I would say try to look at ways in which you can move your passives to being promoters. The third metric is the customer effort score. And as I said before, many organizations need to look at what kind of friction am I putting my customers through in order to get business done with me. I find sometimes organizations, managers or senior people in a company, they sit down and they come up with these bright ideas for how a customer can get in touch or do business with a company. And they don't think about the many different steps that the customer has to take to achieve the goal that they're trying to achieve. So I always say, put yourself in the customer's shoes and you take those same steps that you're asking them to take and ask yourself, is it reasonable to ask a customer to take these steps? And do you feel like it's taking up too much of your time? Because if you feel frustrated, if you are having challenges, then they're going to have the same experience as well. So the quiet killer of repeat business is friction. It's not dissatisfaction. And so the question is, how easy did we make it to get what you needed today? This rating scale is 1 to 7, where 1 represents very difficult and 7 represents very easy. 94% of customers who have a low effort experience state that they'll buy again because the customer is more likely to forgive you for, having I would say an experience that had limited friction versus one that had an easy path by default. So you really need to look at those 3 areas. So the CSAT, how well did we do today? The NPS on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend me to a family or a friend or a colleague? And your customer effort score, CES, did we make it easy for you to achieve or get what you are trying to get today? So how do you use these metrics, right? Ideally, they all have a different place or point that you use them in the business process. So we recommend that you use the CSAT right after a visit or a purchase. So let's say after the customer has completed a transaction with you or completed a service with you, that's a good opportunity to use that CSAT. I think I had recommended that to Angela. As a matter of fact, when the chamber had their focus group last week, I suggested that at the end of every event that the chamber has for those persons who attended, especially if registration is required, and you have their information captured that they were registered and they actually attended, you could send them that 5-question survey just to ask them how they rated the experience that they had at the event or the initiative that you're having, whether it's a networking event or it's a ribbon cutting or whatever it is that the chamber is having, because that gives you real-time information and it's done immediately after the event has occurred. Within the first 24 hours, the information is still fresh in the customer's mind or the member's mind of the experience or the interaction. Just using that as an example, Angie. Then NPS, you would use quarterly. So this is not something you use all the time. You would use this quarterly and it will help you to have an idea of where your customers fall. Where are your promoters? Where are your passives? Where are your detractors? And it helps you to keep an eye on those numbers. And then your CES, you could use after support is provided. Maybe, it's not a transaction, it's maybe something in relation to just some support that you're providing to the customer, or maybe at checkout, or even in the onboarding process. If they're a new customer or a new team member, you could utilize the CES to just to ask them how they thought the process was, and did do they feel like you've made it easy for them to do business or to get what they were looking for. Did they were able to achieve that goal as easy as possible with as little friction as possible? So those are the recommended times that we believe that you can use all 3. All right. Now we want to turn these insights into stronger sales. And it has to be focused on research. That change is nothing. The research alone is not enough. And sometimes it can be expensive, but as I said, we can utilize cheaper ways to do it. And it gives us answers into how we can generate more revenue. So your words that your customers give you are your best sales script. What do we mean by that? Customer data isn't just for your dashboard. It's the language that makes the next prospect say, yes, I will choose this company. I will choose this business. I'll choose this person. So your Q4 becomes your marketing, testimonials and headlines and web copy in the customer's own words. A lot of times you can use your testimonials as marketing material, right? And that's captured from your CSAT and especially in the open-ended responses. And any scores that you get where it relates to your NPS or even your CES, the customer effort score, can be utilized there as well. Their words are the words that sell. So you want to mirror your best customer's exact phrasing back to prospects. So people want to hear how it worked for someone else. Like in my business, for example, I had a client last year that was in logistics, and the customer service program that we implemented with their 800 team members was able to move their bottom line and increase their profit by 30%. Now, there are other initiatives that they took, but the customer experience contributed greatly to it because we changed up a lot of processes. We revamped their service level agreements. We created a new customer service charter for them, and all of those things contributed to them seeing a 30% increase in their profits for the end of 2025. So those are the kinds of things that you need to tell your future prospects, because then it sounds like you know what you're doing. It can translate into revenue growth. And as I said before at the beginning, people go into business to make money. So if you can show them how doing business with you will translate to making more money, then it's more likely that they would be willing to engage you as a partner to help them achieve that. You also want to ensure that you are preempting any objections that they're going to present to you. So the one thing to improve is the doubt your next buyer already has. You have to know what objections your customers are going to come with and be able to counter those objectives confidently. And that's why your customers' words are your best sales script, because if you've done it before, then it means that you've been able to overcome an objection before, so you can apply that same technique with future prospects. And of course, your promoters are your sales channel. Anybody that scores you 9 and 10 for a referral, you want to ensure that you're taking charge, or holding on to that goodwill while it is warm. So important. It's you're trying to build relationships. It's not just about another transaction. It's not just about making money or increasing the bottom line, but it's about creating strong relationships where people, they like you, they trust you, they believe in you, and they want to do business with you, and they want to refer you to other people. And so that's where we want to ensure that we're getting to. So we use the metrics and we use the tools, the mystery shopping and the CSAT. We use it to fix, right? So one thing that I would encourage you to do in this month, we have what? Today is the 22nd, so we have another um 8, 9 days left in the month. I would encourage you to try and fix one thing this month. If you have that kind of data collected, try and use the information to look at what's something that's predominant that you can fix and focus on that issue. Just one. I'm not telling you to tackle everything, just choose one. Coach one person in your team this week. In leadership training, we use a time management quadrant that was designed by Stephen Covey from his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in the quadrant, it has quadrant one is, I believe, urgent and important, right? And urgent and important means it must be done now, and it's the important means it's taking you closer to your goal. We find that a lot of people spend their time in quadrant one because they're constantly out in fires and dealing with emergencies, and they're not necessarily doing things that are taking them closer to their goal. Where you need to spend most of your time is in quadrant two, where the things are not urgent but they are important. So it's in quadrant two that you spend a lot of time coaching and developing people, because at the end of the day, the people in your organization or the people on your team, they are the ones that are going to help to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. And your number one goal in a company is to grow and develop people, because you can't do it all by yourself, right? So you have to strengthen the competencies and the capabilities of other people, and that requires coaching, and that's where you should be spending most of your time in quadrant two. But as I said before, when we do the research, many people that are in organizations, especially in leadership roles, they don't spend most of their time in quadrant two. They spend most of their time in quadrant one, doing things that are urgent and important, which don't carry them closer to developing and growing people. I also encourage you to celebrate one win out loud. Read a real positive comment to the team by name, right? Especially if in the comment, a team member was celebrated, or they were, the customer was saying, I really enjoyed Mary's information and how she dealt with me. She was so responsive. She always responded to my emails within 15 minutes. If she couldn't get through to me through a telephone call, she'd send me an email, or she'd call, or whatever it is that they've mentioned that they're celebrating this team member for, and they've named the person. You want to do that celebration loud with the team. There are two things that it does. It makes Mary feel good, so she'll want to repeat that behavior because she's been celebrated publicly. But it also raises the conscious competence level of those around that are observing the celebration to say they aspire to get rewarded and recognized like that as well. And so, because they aspire to get rewarded and recognized by that as well, they're paying attention to what Mary did. Because remember, in the celebration, you're not just saying that she's being celebrated, but you're saying what she did while she's being celebrated. And then hopefully it impacts the other team members that are observing. And then you need to remeasure in 90 days. All right. It's important that if you're doing any NPS or CSAT or any kind of that kind of work, you want to measure on a regular basis. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, which is a growth multiplier. And emotional intelligence is very important in customer service. So EI is a growth engine. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill that turns satisfied customers into loyal customers. 70% of buying decisions rest on how the customers feel they're treated. That's why that NPS question, how likely would you recommend this company to a family member or friend, is so important, because it's really very subjective. There's no objectivity to that question. It's really just based on how the person feels. So because 70% of buying decisions are based on how people feel, that's why emotional intelligence is so important. 3 times more likely to refer someone when customers feel understood, right? And 90% of top service performers have high EQ. So Daniel Goleman is known as the father of emotional intelligence. Now, he didn't create the term emotional intelligence, but because he's written so many books on emotional intelligence over the years, he's been known as the father of emotional intelligence. And he generated this video where he talks about it and he breaks down the competencies that fall under the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. And to kind of reinforce what I'm talking about for this presentation, I'm going to share this video to emphasize that. So let's jump and look at the video real quickly.
In the future, I think emotional intelligence will be one of several abilities that we need. Another, of course, is cognitive ability, IQ, and maybe AI will take over more and more of that. However, emotional intelligence is a human ability and will always remain so. IQ predicts how well you'll do in your school years and how much salary you can make over the course of a career, because it says what job you can get into, like being a business executive or a doctor or a lawyer. But once you're in those professions, everybody else is about as smart as you are. That's where emotional intelligence kicks in. People who emerge as outstanding performers or the best leaders have high emotional intelligence, and their IQ is not that relevant at that point. I'm Daniel Goleman. I've written many books, mostly on emotional intelligence. That's really my favorite topic. The book, Emotional Intelligence, many years ago was an international bestseller. I've written now 5 books on the topic. My most recent is Optimal: How to Sustain Personal and Organizational Excellence Every Day. Emotional intelligence is a set of personal skills that we learn in life. It's a combination of self-awareness, managing your emotions well, empathy, tuning into other people, and putting that all together to have harmonious or effective relationships. Emotional intelligence has been talked about for centuries. Philosophers were talking about know thyself, that's self-awareness. But when I wrote the Emotional Intelligence book in '95, it was the first time that for a popular audience, emotional intelligence had become well known. I was a science journalist at the New York Times back then, and I'd been covering a decade of research on the brain and emotion. And in doing so, I came across a very obscure article called Emotional Intelligence, and I loved the title. It was by Peter Salovey, who's just stepping down as the president of Yale University, and his then graduate student, John Mayer. And I thought, wow, what a great phrase. It seems like an oxymoron. You don't put emotions together with intelligence, but actually it's being intelligent about emotions. When I wrote Emotional Intelligence, I was actually thinking of bringing it to schools. It seemed to me that kids should learn from the get-go how to manage themselves, how to tune into themselves, how to tune into other people, how to get along, how to behave well, and so on. I was a big advocate of what's now called social emotional learning. And from early on, my view of emotional intelligence hasn't really changed much, but I integrated it with findings from research on outstanding performers. And I saw that different abilities of high performers, like being able to manage your emotions, fit well in the model. And now I talk about 4 domains of emotional intelligence, and then 12 particular competencies of people who are high in emotional intelligence. Self-awareness means you know what you're feeling, you know how it shapes your perceptions and your thoughts and your impulse to act. We find in our research that people low in self-awareness are unable to develop strengths very well in other parts of emotional intelligence. People who are high in self-awareness, however, are able to develop excellence across the board. Self-management means when you're upset, when you're angry, when you're anxious, can you manage your emotions? Can you keep them from disrupting your focus on what you have to do right now? We're having more instances of road rage, of shootings, of people blowing up at other people. There's a growing need for people in general to get better at this ability. The third part is social awareness, which in one sense means practicing empathy. You not only know how the person thinks and how they feel, you care about them. This is what you want in your parents. This is what you want in your spouse. This is what you want in your lover. This is what you want in your friends. And this is what you want in your teachers, doctors, leaders of any kind, people who have influence. The fourth part of emotional intelligence is relationship management. Can you handle conflicts well? Can you keep yourself calm and listen to the other person? Are you being an effective communicator? Full rapport means that you feel close, you feel you can work with this person, you can trust them. Unlike IQ, which barely budges over the course of our life, emotional intelligence can change. It's learned and learnable. And it's learned and learnable at any point in life. Emotional intelligence is not one thing. It's like going to a doctor for a physical. You get your lipids and your good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. You get 15 data points. Emotional intelligence is a set of abilities, and each of us has strengths and limitations across that spectrum. So if you want to improve your emotional intelligence, see where you need to improve first. One of the common colds of emotional intelligence is poor listening. You know, we think about what we want to say and we don't really listen to the other person and we cut them off, we interrupt. Let's say you wanted to change that. This is a basic of empathy, listening well. So if you want to learn to be better at empathy, you might say, my habit, and I've done it thousands of times, is cutting people off and interrupting. I'm going to make the effort to do it differently. I'm going to listen to the person out, say what I think they mean, and then say what I think. That is a different behavioral sequence. And it comes down to the basics of what we call neuroplasticity, how the brain changes with repeated experience. And that's what underlies habit change. It's a little like crossing your arms in a new way. Cross your arms in the old way, please. Now cross them with the other arm on top. That feels uncomfortable. That's what it's like to change a habit. So with listening, you have to first make an intentional effort. Might feel uncomfortable, but as you persist, it gets more and more comfortable until finally it's an automatic habit. That will stay with you for years. You know, I've gone around the world talking to different audiences, and one of the things I love to ask is, tell me about a leader you've loved and a leader you hate. And tell me one quality that makes a leader so good or so bad. Basically, the leader you hate is low in emotional intelligence. They don't manage their emotions very well. They blow up at people, don't empathize, they don't tune in, they don't understand how clueless they are. The leader you love is high in it. Having a boss with high emotional intelligence means you feel not only inspired, not only motivated, you feel supported, you feel guided, you feel you have clarity about what's expected from you. You give your best in your best state, in the optimal state, not in a desperate, stressed out state. Research at the Yale School of Management has found that emotions are contagious, and they're most contagious from the leader outward. The leader is most often the sender of strong emotions, either negative or positive. And this very research by Sigal Barsade has shown that if the leader is in a negative mood, very anxious, for example, people on that team will catch that mood and performance goes down. If the leader's in a very positive mood, I feel really good, I feel enthusiastic, then people catch that positive mood and their performance as a team or as a group goes up. So the leader's state is actually much more important on the ability of people to do good work than many people realize, particularly many leaders actually. But if you have a leader that you hate, for example, and sadly too many people do, then you really don't give your best. In fact, you're more likely to leave as soon as you can, particularly if you're talented. So a leader with low emotional intelligence is actually draining the organization in the long term. They may get results for the quarter by driving people, by stressing them out, but they're burning them out and they're going to lose good people. So in the short term, they may look good. In the long term, it's a disaster. I once took a bus up Madison Avenue in New York City on a very hot, humid day. People had a kind of bubble around them like, don't touch me, don't talk to me, and I had the bubble too. I got on the bus and the bus driver shocked me. He looked at me and very warmly said, welcome to the bus. How's your day going? And then I realized, sitting on the bus, that he was carrying on a conversation with everyone on the bus. You're looking for suits, are you? Well, there's a great sale up here on the right at this department store. Did you see the exhibit in the museum on the left? On and on and on. And then people would get off that bus and they've been transformed from kind of grumpy to pretty upbeat. It was kind of magical. And years later, I saw an article in the New York Times about that bus driver. His name, it turned out, was Govan Brown. He had fans. People would wait for his bus. He got 3,000 letters saying what a great bus driver he was, not one complaint. And he, it turned out, was the pastor of a church. And he saw the people on his bus as part of his flock. He was tending to his flock. He had a purpose that was far greater than that of the New York Transit Authority, which is something like getting as many people to where they want to go on time as we can. He had a splendid sense of what he was doing. It gave a greater meaning to what he did, and he did it superbly. I've always felt that the more emotional intelligence in society, the better. I think we would have parents who are more effective in raising kids, who are kinder. We'd have more compassion for each other in our interaction with friends and loved ones as well as with strangers. I think we would care more about the environment, which is why I've been happy to be a kind of evangelist for emotional intelligence, if you will. I'm not the originator of the phrase. I think I made it more famous. I just think it would make a better world.
Get smarter, faster with videos from the world's biggest thinkers. To learn even more.
All right. So that was emotional intelligence. I hope that video was very insightful for you all. I'm also mindful of our time, right, Angie? So I'm going to wrap up really quickly. So empathy is a business tool, which you heard Daniel Goleman speak a while ago in his presentation. And there's a very big difference between sympathy and empathy. So sympathy is, I'm sorry you feel that way. Empathy is, I understand why this is frustrating. Let me help. And it's not just about saying it, but your tone also needs to show or demonstrate that's how you're actually feeling. You have three types of empathy: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. Cognitive empathy is where you understand the person's point of view for whatever complaint or negotiation they're presenting. Emotional is where you feel what they feel for any service recovery. And compassionate is where you say something like, I see it and here's what I'll do. And that's kind of the sweet spot. That's kind of where we think you should be in the space of compassionate empathy. Now, there are some phrases that we recommend that you could use, and the full list will be in the takeaway that Angie will email to you hopefully by tomorrow. But just to share the first one with you, we don't want you telling any customers or your team members telling customers that's not our policy, or you should have called earlier, or that's not my department. Instead, you should be saying, I understand why that's frustrating. Here's what I can do. I wish we'd connected sooner. Here's what we can do now. Let me get you directly to the right person. So you change your language completely so you don't alienate the person that you're communicating with. So to kind of close the loop, know your customer growth loop, you want to listen, do low cost research, surveys, reviews, mystery shops. Then you want to measure, turn your answers into CSAT, NPS, and CES that you can track. Then you want to act and sell, fix the top issue, turn insights into sales, and then connect with your customers by delivering it with emotional intelligence. So, three things that I encourage you to do before Friday. Ask 10 customers on a scale of 0 to 10 how likely they'd recommend you. This is your NPS baseline. This shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. Call your own business. You choose the busiest hour that your business has. Um, Try to do it from an unknown number and then write the three words that seem the strangest to you based on the interaction that you had with the team member. That shouldn't take you more than 4 minutes. And then read your last 20 reviews, tally any specifics, whatever appears three or more times, that should be your priority. That one will take you a little bit more time, but if you can, I encourage you to do these three things. So, five things to remember: 96% of unhappy customers never complain and they'll just leave and they'll probably tell 15 people or more. The national ACSI score is 76.7. Now you know the bar, so you can measure against that. Five questions give you intelligence brands that a lot of times you're going to pay a consultant thousands of dollars for. Your CSAT, your NPS, and your CES answer different questions. Happy, loyal, easy, start with one. And emotional intelligence is a multiplier that turns satisfied customers into loyal customers. If you'd like to learn more, we do have a webinar series that we are hosting. The next one is in September, the New Manager's Survival Guide. October is Heart Over Hardware Skills AI Can't Touch, and November is Measure What Matters Most. And I am offering a free 30-minute discovery call to anyone that mentions Miramar Chamber when you book through Yanique at the ElevateCX. So your customers are already talking. The only question is, are you listening? Thank you so much. And if I have a minute, Angie,
Yeah.
does anyone have any questions that you'd
Yeah,
like to
I would
ask?
definitely like, those that are still with us, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. While you're thinking of that, I did have one that I wanted to ask you, Unique.
Sure.
Thank you so much for this information. I think it's so important that our businesses listen to their customers so that we can always give them the best version of ourselves. So earlier I noticed we had a couple people with us that were primarily more into service, right? So we had an attorney on here, we had a financial advisor. Does this research process change in any sort of way with that versus a retail business?
No, it does not.
Okay, awesome.
Good
Awesome. Good to
question,
know.
though, but no, it does not. It doesn't matter if it's a product, a tangible item that you're walking away with, or it's a service. It's still customers that you're serving, and those questions can still be asked, and they can be utilized at the different periods that I mentioned. So after an interaction that you had with your client as a lawyer, or after an interaction that you had with, what was the other profession you said was here?
We had a financial advisor, we had an
Right.
attorney here with us,
Right.
some
So, if
realtors.
you had a call with a customer and they've come on board maybe after the onboarding process. So it just depends on the line of business that you are in. Maybe you can look at the different steps that you take to acquire the customer. And then after the customer becomes a customer, let's say it takes 30 days or 60 days, you would maybe do the CSAT survey versus something that's more transactional, like where someone buys something and walks away. So the frequency might be less based on how long it takes to get the person as a customer, but the questions and the initiative would remain the same.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will be making sure to get her presentation and definitely that link so you can schedule your 30-minute session with Yanique. If you happen upon this event because we sent you the Zoom link directly, just make sure that you're registered so we make sure we have your email address and all that stuff. You can actually still hop on our website and register for today's event so that we can capture your information. And we'll make sure that you get all of the follow-ups from today. If anyone has
Vanessa is asking if we're going to get a presentation. Do you want me to send it to you?
Yeah, let's do the slides as well if you could, because there were some great numbers on there and definitely the takeaways of what they can start this week. That was a great point and kind of that first step that people can take. So if you can share the slides with us as well, that'd be awesome.
Perfect. I'll send it to you.
Wonderful. Well, if no one has any questions, we wish you well on your journey to customer experience satisfaction. And if you're not well on that journey, then we encourage you to reach out to Yanique at ElevateCX. And I wish you all the great rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie. Thanks, everyone.